There are a lot of topics in this world that a lot of people are very conscious with talking about, such as money, politics, and religion. But then there are topics that people are talking about but don't necessarily understand. And those topics are mental illnesses, and specifically bipolar disorder. Today you have the pleasure of learning about bipolar disorder from someone who knows a little bit about it. Hello, I am Michaela. I am 21 years old, and when I was just 18 years old, I had what I like to call a mental breakdown. A mental breakdown for me is when my brain completely shuts off to the entire world except for the very emotion that I am feeling. And when I feel sad, I feel sad. I found myself in my driveway at midnight, completely hysterical, ready to pack everything I owned and move it to Florida to live with a toxic person, until I called a really close friend of mine. Throughout my life, I struggled with mental instability, and I didn't really understand what it was until I talked to this friend. This friend specifically encouraged me to seek help, and when I did, I met my psychiatrist, Dr. Lantos. When I first met him, I was really nervous, as anyone would be. You're going to see a doctor and you don't know why, and you don't know what's wrong with you. All you know is that there's something not right in your brain and you need them to fix it. When I got diagnosed 2 hours later, I then thought, this man is crazy. And then I denied it completely until I learned the information I'm about to share with you, such as what the two types of bipolar disorder are, the symptoms that go hand in hand with it, and more information about getting diagnosed. Bipolar disorder is a mental illness that causes a shift in a person's mood that can affect their day-to-day life in many different ways. In order to understand more about bipolar, you have to understand the two types. There's bipolar type 1 and bipolar type 2. Bipolar type 1 is defined by manic episodes that can last at least 7 days. Manic episodes are then followed by depressive episodes, which can be about 2 weeks. Depressive episodes require immediate attention usually, as they can be dangerous in such as suicidal thoughts or attempts. There is then bipolar disorder type 2, which is when the person has depressive episodes and kind of lives in a depressive state, and then can experience hypomanic episodes, which are not as severe as a full-blown manic episode. Now that we have a little bit more of an understanding of the two types of bipolar, let's talk about the different symptoms that come along with them. There are manic or your happy symptoms, and those can include feeling happy or high, feeling wired to the point where you stay up for days upon days to no end, and feeling really irritable and not really understanding why, kind of like getting your coffee made wrong at Dunkin' Donuts and being really mad about it, and then not understanding why you're that mad. You're just mad. Also, engaging in risky or dangerous behavior can be a manic episode or a manic symptom. During a manic episode, your common sense goes out the window and you don't think about the consequences for the choices that you are making. In my personal situation, it would be packing everything I owned and moving down to Florida with just $653 to my name. There are then depressive symptoms, and depressive symptoms are when you feel worthless or you feel suicidal or you just feel empty. You can also have a change in appetite, which can either be eating way too much or way too little. In my personal experience, when I am sad, I binge. And then one symptom that I didn't know about until I was diagnosed was forgetting things and forgetting them often. I felt like I was going crazy when I was at my lowest point because I could never remember a time or a day or a name or a face. And I never knew why. And so now that we know the types and the symptoms, let's talk a little bit about what a diagnosis can look like. Diagnosis is an extremely important part of being bipolar. In order to get diagnosed, you can either, one, be admitted into a mental institution, and that's kind of a last resort option. That's when you are attempting suicide. Usually is when you are put in a mental hospital. Another way is by seeing a psychiatrist, which is the route that I took. A psychiatrist will most likely ask you for your symptoms and feelings, and then they will generate more questions to ask you based off of the answers that you give to the previous question. They can also send you out, have you come back with a mood chart where you chart for a week what your moods were, when they happened, and the fluctuation of them. And they also may ask you to have a physical exam done just to make sure that there's nothing underlying going on to cause these symptoms. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, bipolar affects 2.8% of the United States adult population. Bipolar disorder can be very serious. According to the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, 1 in 5 bipolar patients attempt incomplete suicide. Fortunately, in my case, I now have my bipolar under control and I live a mostly normal life. And if you think you may have bipolar, you should seek help immediately. Hopefully after today you learned that bipolar disorder is more than having just a lot of feelings. It's having a lot of feelings and feeling them in extremes. There are more symptoms than just being happy and being sad and feeling them in unstable fluctuation. We learned that there are 2 types of bipolar disorder and that the diagnosis is very important, and also how to get diagnosed. Thank you.